We live in a world that glorifies business. If you're not running, if you're not hustling, if you're not producing something every single minute of the day, people look at you as if you're wasting your life. We equate movement with progress and noise with success. But here's the truth sometimes. The most powerful thing we can do is nothing at all. Doing nothing doesn't mean being lazy. It doesn't mean giving up. It means allowing space for clarity, space for creativity, and space for ourselves to reset. Think about it, some of the greatest ideas, the most profound breakthroughs, don't come when we're forcing them. They come when we pause, when we're quiet, when we stop trying to control everything. The power of doing nothing at all lies in understanding that rest is not the opposite of progress. It is part of progress. If we can shift our mindset from always doing to sometimes being, we discover balance, focus, and a deeper sense of purpose. So today, let's explore what it really means to embrace stillness, why stepping back can sometimes be the boldest step forward, and how doing nothing at all may just be the most productive thing you'll ever do. We often mistake stillness for stagnation. The moment someone says they are doing nothing, society automatically assumes they are being lazy or unproductive. But the truth is, doing nothing is one of the most powerful practices we can embrace, because in that space of silence and pause, the mind is given the freedom to wander, to reset, and to reconnect with itself. When you are constantly moving, constantly pushing, and constantly trying to fill every second with activity, you leave no room for reflection. And reflection is where clarity is born. It is where ideas begin to take shape. Think about the last time you had a truly meaningful insight. Did it come while you were buried under endless tasks, switching from one thing to another without pause? Or did it come in a quiet moment, maybe when you were sitting in a park, staring at the ceiling, or even taking a shower? More often than not, breakthroughs don't arrive when we are forcing them. They arrive when we allow ourselves to step back and do nothing. Doing nothing, in fact, is a discipline. It requires you to resist the pull of distraction, the urge to scroll, the temptation to fill empty time with noise. In stillness, the mind starts to breathe again. Creativity, which often gets suffocated by routine and pressure, begins to flow freely. That is why artists, writers, and innovators often speak of their ideas appearing in unexpected moments of idleness. The human brain thrives on periods of rest. Neuroscience even shows that when we are not focused on a specific task, our brain's default mode network activates. This network is responsible for imagination, memory, and creative problem solving. In other words, when you let your mind wander aimlessly, it is not wasting energy. It is building new connections, piecing together fragments of thoughts, and giving birth to fresh perspectives. The modern world, however, resists this idea. We glorify business. We wear exhaustion like a badge of honor. If someone tells us they spent the afternoon doing nothing, we raise an eyebrow, silently judging them for wasting time. Yet the irony is, those moments of wasted time can become the most valuable. They can lead to decisions made with clarity instead of pressure, ideas born from inspiration instead of urgency, and solutions discovered in peace rather than chaos. By allowing ourselves to do nothing, we are actually investing in our ability to perform better when it is time to act. Just like muscles need recovery to grow stronger, the mind needs emptiness to regain its sharpness. The power of doing nothing is also about presence. When you are not chasing after the next thing, you begin to notice the simple beauty of being alive. You hear the sound of your own breath. You notice the way light falls across a room. You become aware of your own thoughts without judgment. And in that awareness, you learn more about yourself than you ever could while running on autopilot. Presence brings perspective, and perspective brings wisdom. Sometimes, doing nothing is not just about pausing for clarity, it is about reconnecting with what really matters. It is about reminding yourself that you are more than your to-do list, more than your achievements, and more than your constant business. We are conditioned to believe that rest is wasted time, that the moments we step away from work, from goals, from the constant chase are moments where we fall behind. Yet if you look closer, you will see that rest is not the opposite of progress. It is an essential part of progress. Without rest, even the strongest body collapses, even the sharpest mind becomes dull, and even the most driven spirit loses direction. Think about the way nature works. Seasons change, not because one is more important than the other, but because each has a purpose. The earth rests in winter so it can bloom in spring. Fields are left fallow so the soil can regenerate and grow stronger. Athletes train hard, but they also know that recovery is what allows their muscles to repair, rebuild, and come back even stronger. Rest is not quitting. Rest is preparation. In our modern culture, we equate progress with movement. If we are not constantly busy, we feel guilty. We carry the belief that more hours, more effort, and more grinding equals more success. But look at the people who sustain excellence. The ones who thrive not just for a short burst of time, but across decades of their lives. They understand the rhythm of progress. They know that stepping back is part of moving forward. They value sleep, downtime, reflection, and deliberate pauses because they realize that energy, focus, and creativity are renewable resources, and renewal only happens when we allow space for it. Science proves this too. When the body is deprived of rest, it doesn't just feel tired. It loses its ability to think clearly, solve problems, and regulate emotions. The brain literally needs downtime to process experiences, store memories, and make connections. Without rest, stress hormones rise, decision-making falters, and our ability to innovate shrinks. That means rest is not just nice to have, it is an advantage. It gives us clarity when others are confused, calm when others are restless, and resilience when others are burning out. The irony is so many of us resist rest because we think it slows us down, when in reality it makes us faster, sharper, and more effective. Imagine a marathon runner who never stops to hydrate. They may think they're saving time, but sooner or later, exhaustion will force them to stop altogether. Now imagine the same runner pacing themselves, pausing for water, giving their body what it needs. They may seem slower in the moment, but they finish stronger, steadier, and with far more endurance. That is what rest does for us. It ensures that our progress is not just immediate, but sustainable. There is also a deeper kind of rest, not just physical, but emotional and mental. Sometimes rest means stepping away from the pressure of comparison, the endless scrolling, the constant noise of demands. Sometimes rest means giving yourself permission to just be, without producing, without achieving, without proving anything to anyone. That kind of rest renews not only your energy, but also your sense of self. It reminds you that your worth is not tied to how much you do, but to who you are. And when you return to your work, your relationships, and your goals, you return with strength, focus, and authenticity. The greatest leaders, thinkers, and creators in history did not achieve greatness by working endlessly without pause. They embraced cycles of effort and renewal. They understood that rest fuels insight, that progress is born not just from the hours of doing, but also from the moments of stepping back. To honor rest is to honor progress itself. When we think about productivity, we often measure it by how many tasks we've checked off, how many meetings we've attended, or how many hours we've spent working. Yet, what if true productivity is not about how much we do, but about how deeply we connect with what we do? Stillness is what allows us to make that connection. When you stop for a moment, when you quiet the noise around you, you begin to hear something much more important. The voice within you that speaks of purpose. Without stillness, we are swept away in the current of constant activity, reacting to the world instead of intentionally creating our place in it. Stillness is not simply the absence of motion. It is the presence of awareness. It is in those quiet spaces that you begin to understand why you are doing what you're doing. Without that clarity, It's easy to fall into the trap of chasing productivity for its own sake. You can be busy all day long yet feel empty at the end of it, because you have been moving without meaning. But when you pause, when you let yourself breathe, you can ask the deeper questions: does this work matter? Does this align with who I want to become? Am I moving closer to a life of purpose, or am I just keeping myself occupied? The problem is, the world doesn't encourage us to ask those questions. It rewards action, output, and speed. But here's the irony: without purpose, all that action eventually leads to exhaustion. You can climb the ladder of success only to discover it's leaning against the wrong wall. Stillness is what helps us check where that ladder is leaning before we spend years climbing it. It prevents us from mistaking activity for achievement and reminds us that meaning is more valuable than motion. When we cultivate stillness, we also cultivate presence. We notice the conversations we're in instead of rushing through them. We notice the people we love instead of treating them as background noise to our busy lives. We notice our own emotions, our own dreams, and our own values instead of ignoring them in pursuit of external recognition. That connection to purpose doesn't just make us feel better, it makes us more effective. Because when you know your why, your energy is focused, your choices are intentional, and your progress is meaningful. Some of the most inspiring leaders and creators understood the necessity of stillness. They would carve out time not to plan, not to strategize, not to act, but simply to reflect. They created space in their lives to ask, what truly matters here? What difference do I want to make? That reflection shaped their vision and gave power to their decisions. Without stillness, vision becomes clouded. With stillness, vision becomes clear. The truth is, stillness is not a luxury, it is a responsibility. Because without it, we risk living on autopilot, doing what everyone else is doing, chasing what everyone else is chasing, and never pausing to consider if that is really our path. Stillness is where courage is born. It takes courage to stop, to listen, to align yourself with purpose when the world demands that you keep running. But that courage leads to a life where productivity is no longer about quantity. It is about quality. It is no longer about impressing others. It is about fulfilling yourself. And when you live with that kind of purpose, every action you take carries more weight, more meaning, and more impact than 1,000 moments of aimless business ever could. Some of the best ideas we ever have don't come when we are grinding through spreadsheets, answering emails, or sitting in long meetings. They come in the quiet moments, when we are walking without a destination, when we are staring out of a window, when we are in the shower with no distractions, or when we are simply sitting in silence. That is because creativity doesn't respond well to pressure. You cannot force a breakthrough any more than you can force a seed to grow by shouting at it. Creativity needs space. It needs quiet. It needs moments of nothingness to breathe and expand. Chaos may keep us busy, but stillness gives us room to discover. When you allow yourself silence, your brain begins to work in ways you don't consciously control. Connections form, patterns emerge, and fragments of ideas start to link together in new ways. Neuroscientists call this incubation, a process where your subconscious mind continues to work on problems long after you've stopped thinking about them. That's why you can struggle with a problem for hours, feel stuck, and then suddenly, when you're doing something unrelated and quiet, the solution appears as if from nowhere. Those flashes of insight are not accidents. They are the direct result of giving your mind the space it needs to wander without pressure. In chaos, there is too much noise for these connections to happen. When every moment is filled with distractions, notifications, conversations, obligations, the brain is in constant reaction mode. It's like trying to hear a whisper in the middle of a crowded stadium. The whisper of creativity can't be heard above the noise. But when you step into silence, you finally hear it. That's why some of history's greatest discoveries and inventions came not in the lab or the office, But during walks, meditations, and times of still reflection, the human mind was designed not just for action, but for imagination. And imagination requires silence. The tragedy of our age is that we've nearly eliminated silence. The moment we are free, we reach for our phones, fill our ears with music, or scroll through endless feeds. We are uncomfortable with stillness because it feels like emptiness. But it is precisely in that emptiness that new ideas are born. Think of silence as fertile soil. If you keep pouring concrete over it with business and distraction, nothing can grow. But if you leave it open, seeds of thought will take root and flourish. Stillness is not just about creating new ideas, it's about seeing old problems in new ways. Sometimes what we need is not a brand new thought, but a fresh perspective on something we've been struggling with. Silence reframes things. It slows us down enough to notice details we missed, to reconsider assumptions we've taken for granted, and to see opportunities where before we only saw obstacles. In the absence of chaos, clarity emerges. There is also a deeper gift in silence. It connects us with ourselves. When we are constantly surrounded by noise, it's easy to confuse other people's voices for our own. We start to think we want things we don't really want, or we pursue goals that don't truly belong to us. But when everything grows quiet, our authentic voice rises to the surface. That voice guides us toward ideas and paths that are not just clever, but meaningful. The best ideas are not the loudest ones. They are the ones whispered to us in moments of stillness. And if we want more of them, if we want to live not just busy but creative, not just active but inspired, then we must learn to value silence as much as action. We are taught from a young age that progress is always about forward motion. If you are not moving, you are not achieving. If you are not pushing, you are falling behind. But what if the bravest and most powerful step you can take is not forward at all, but backward? What if the choice to step away, to pause, to retreat for a moment is not weakness, but wisdom? Stepping back is not about giving up. It is about gaining the perspective and strength needed to move with greater clarity and purpose. In a world obsessed with acceleration, it takes courage to slow down. Yet those who master the art of stepping back often end up moving further than those who never stop. Think about climbing a mountain. There are times when the path gets too steep, the air too thin, and your body too tired to continue. If you insist on pushing ahead without pause, you risk collapse. But if you step back, if you allow yourself to stop and regain your strength, you give yourself a chance not only to recover, but also to study the path ahead. That pause allows you to see obstacles you missed in your exhaustion, to choose a smarter route, and to continue your climb with renewed energy. In this way, stepping back is not the opposite of progress. It is the very thing that makes progress sustainable. We often confuse business with bravery. We think the strongest leaders are the ones who never stop, who never show hesitation, who always march forward no matter what. But real strength lies in knowing when to pause. It takes humility to admit you need a moment to reset. It takes wisdom to recognize that rushing ahead without clarity will only create more problems. The greatest leaders, innovators, and thinkers in history were not those who charged blindly into the future. They were those who had the courage to step back, reflect, and re-enter with vision. Stepping back also protects us from burnout. Our culture glorifies exhaustion as proof of dedication, but exhaustion does not create excellence. In fact, it destroys it. A burned-out mind cannot innovate. A weary heart cannot inspire. A tired leader cannot lead. By stepping back, you are not losing time. You are reclaiming energy, focus, and balance. And when you return, you bring a sharper mind, a steadier heart, and a clearer direction. That is not weakness. That is wisdom in action. There is another hidden power in stepping back. It allows us to see the bigger picture. When you are too close to a situation, you see only the details in front of you. You become trapped in urgency, reacting instead of choosing. But when you step back, you create distance. That distance brings perspective, and perspective reveals opportunities you could not see when you were buried in the noise. Some of the best solutions come not from working harder, but from pausing long enough to see things differently. Stepping back is also an act of trust. It means trusting yourself enough to know that pausing will not erase your progress, and trusting life enough to know that clarity comes in the quiet. It is easy to keep running, to keep doing, to keep forcing. It is harder to pause, to breathe, to wait. But in that waiting, strength is built. In that pause, direction is discovered. And when you step forward again, it is not with desperation, but with intention. Sometimes the boldest step you can take is not forward, but backward. Not because you are retreating, but because you are preparing to leap further than you ever could by running blindly ahead. We live in a time where achievement is measured by how much we can juggle, how fast we can respond, and how much we can produce. But what most people overlook is that a truly meaningful and sustainable life does not come from endless motion, but from balance. Balance is the quiet force that keeps us steady, the anchor that prevents us from drifting too far into chaos, and the compass that guides us back when we are overwhelmed. The balance between doing and being is what transforms success from something temporary into something lasting. Without balance, even the most accomplished person will eventually crumble under the weight of constant activity. With balance, however, progress becomes not just possible, but enjoyable. Doing is about action, about moving things forward, about building and achieving. Being, on the other hand, is about presence. It is about pausing to notice life as it unfolds, about reflecting on who we are and why we are here. Both are necessary. If we only do, we risk becoming machines, productive but empty. If we only be, we risk becoming stagnant, reflective but inactive. But when we combine the two, when we find the rhythm between doing and being, we live in alignment. Our actions are not random. They are rooted in meaning. Our stillness is not idle, it is restorative. Consider the life of a musician. A song is not made only of notes. It is made equally of pauses, of rests, of silences between the sounds. Without those pauses, the music would be noise. Without the notes, the silence would be empty. But together, they create harmony. Our lives work the same way. Doing without being becomes noise. Being without doing becomes emptiness. But when we honor both, we create harmony in our lives, a rhythm that feels natural, purposeful, and whole. Balance also protects us from extremes. Too much doing leads to burnout. Too much being leads to drifting without direction. Balance allows us to move forward steadily without losing ourselves along the way. It reminds us that achievement is not about sprinting to the finish line, but about building a life we can sustain. A balanced life is not one without ambition. It is one where ambition is matched by reflection, where effort is balanced with renewal, where success is paired with meaning. This balance between doing and being also gives us resilience. When challenges come, and they always do, if you are only focused on doing, setbacks feel like failure. But if you are equally grounded in being, setbacks become lessons. You learn to step back, to reflect, to regain perspective, and then to act again with greater wisdom. Balance keeps you from being consumed by either action or inaction. It gives you the stability to keep moving, even when life is uncertain. The most fulfilled people are not those who do the most, nor those who retreat from the world entirely. They are those who master the art of balance. They know when to act and when to pause. They know when to push and when to rest. They know that life is not a competition of constant productivity, but a journey of meaningful presence. That is what makes their success sustainable and their lives joyful. Balance between doing and being is not something we find once and keep forever. It is something we practice daily, something we adjust as life changes, something we return to when we drift too far in one direction. But each time we return to it, we find ourselves stronger, clearer, and more aligned. And it is in that alignment that true success, true happiness, and true fulfillment are found.